So David Seymour's Regulatory Standards Bill just passed its third and final reading. Now, with this bill's passing, I am not being hyperbolic in stating that New Zealand has officially crossed a political threshold that we may never well recover from, because the RSB at its core serves as a total redefining of who lawmaking is for and who lawmaking is by. Now, there are a lot of people out there who don't quite know what to make of this. They know that it is bad, but they probably couldn't tell you why. This video is for them, so before we go any further, this information is very, very important, which is why we need it to reach as many eyeballs as possible. So please, do me a favor, tap all 4 buttons, like, comment, repost, share, save, and watch to the end. Now, in order to understand the RSB, we have to first understand who our laws are meant to serve. And at least in principle, that answer had, up until a couple of days ago, always been us. The public, communities, workers, families, small businesses, hapori Māori. And the people who made those laws were the people elected by us. Now, admittedly, the system was far from perfect, but at least it was ours. Under the RSB, lawmaking is no longer being shaped by the people that we elect. It is being shaped for corporate and economic interests by unelected officials. Going forward, the RSB means instead of a law being assessed by how it will benefit the public by the people we elected to represent us, they will now be assessed against a set of so-called principles of good regulation. Efficiency, proportionality, minimizing adverse effects on individual liberties. I'm losing you, aren't I? Well, you see, that's their trick as well, because the RSB was worded in a way to make it sound eye-wateringly boring, to include buzzwords designed to stop you from paying attention while they reshape the country in ways that you would never in a million years consent to. This is straight from the Atlas playbook, the same ones that push government to scrap environmental protections, weaken worker safety, and undermine obligations to Indigenous people. Here's all you need to know. If an environmental safeguard slows down a corporate project, the RSB committee can deem it inefficient. If a worker protection costs a business money, then they can say that it is disproportionate and they can scrap it. If a regulation honors statutory, meaning targeted support for Māori, the RSB committee can decide that it violates individual liberties. Now, of course, the government knows New Zealanders would never openly vote for weaker environmental rules, fewer worker protections, or the erosion of treaty responsibilities. So instead of doing those things openly, they built a machine to do it for them. That machine is called the Regulatory Standards Bill. Now, comes the part in the video where you ask me, Sean, who do we blame for this? Well, the easy answer would be David Seymour. He's been dreaming of a tool like the RSB his entire political career. The bill is his ideological Disneyland, a place where environmental protections and workers' rights go to die. We could blame Mr. I'm Sorted, Christopher Luxon. Of course, he wants a system that makes it easier to weaken protections behind closed doors. But if you ask me, the person most to blame is the only coalition partner who had the leverage to stop it. Winston Peters. He knew exactly what this bill was. Because he knew exactly what this bill was. He's been in Parliament longer than David Seymour has been alive. He was elected when Christopher Luxon was just a 5-year-old boy with a receding hairline. He had real leverage here. He could have stopped it. He could have said that if the RSB reaches even a first reading, New Zealand First walks away from the coalition. Let's talk about who Winston Peters really sold out here. He sold out the pensioner, the person on a fixed income who needs strong consumer protections, fair pricing, safe drinking water, and regulated essential services, because they cannot absorb sudden cost increases that will come as a result of this bill. Let's talk about what Winston Peters did here. He didn't own the left. He didn't drink liberal tears. He didn't take it to the woke mob. He betrayed his own voters. The very people who genuinely believed that Winston was the firewall against exactly this kind of agenda. And with this bill's passing, Winston has proven that he was no firewall at all. He was the door.
They call it innovation. They tell us New Zealand's policies are outdated, that we need to keep up with the world. But this government has provided no economic cost-benefit analysis to support this bill or its serious trade and market impact risks. If Luxton believes this will make us rich, what is he basing this upon? Or is that actually telling us something? What they are doing is opening the door for global biotech corporations to own and control our land, our farms, and eventually our future. This isn't about progress, it's about power. With almost 15,000 submissions and 97% opposing this bill in its current form, the government was told loud and clear, we do not consent. Yet why are they pushing it through anyway?
We've got a memo!
So I ask, who are they really working for? Who's pulling the strings behind the scenes? Because it's not we, the people. This bill would end our clean, green GMO status overnight, taking us from one of the world's most respected agricultural nations to some of the most loosest gene tech policies on earth. This bill destroys our food labelling laws, so gene-edited foods will arrive on our shelves and in our restaurants with no freedom to choose. This strips us from one of the most basic human rights, the right to know what we're putting into our bodies. We are told gene editing is safe and effective. Where have we heard that before? Yet in the sow-corn hornless cattle experiment, scientists thought they'd made a single change, but regulators later found that over 4,000 base pairs of bacterial DNA, including antibiotic resistance genes, were unintentionally inserted. This is not precision, it's gambling with nature. This is about man playing God, and the egoic arrogance of believing he can alter, manipulate, own and control what natural evolution has built over millions of years. And this history has taught us that nature always wins. We already have superbugs and superweeds because man cannot outsmart evolution. And now they want to edit the code of life itself. 25 years ago, I founded the Queenstown chapter of MAG, Mothers Against Genetic Engineering. Back then, we fought alongside Green MPs like Sue Kedgley here to keep New Zealand GMO-free, to protect our labelling laws and give parents the right to choose what goes into their children's bodies. We did it then, and we can do it again, because this time the stakes are even higher. The push for gene-edited crops and animals, and even humans, is coming from the same global forces behind the World Economic Forum, the Gates Foundation, and multinational food giants that already control more than 80% of the world's seed market. They call it sustainability, but it's corporate capture of governments, of farmers, and of life itself. Once a gene is patented, whoever owns that patent owns the life form. That means a handful of corporations could own the genetic code of our food supply and charge farmers every season for the right to grow it. I could stand here today as a metabolic health expert of 30 years who studied every move of big food, big ag, and big pharma over that time. And I could tell you how ultra-processed, pesticide-ridden GMO foods are destroying human health and are driving the epidemic of metabolic disease and are contributing to mental health illness. But today, I stand here as a mother and as a grandmother, out of love for this land and for our generations to come. I believe in the intelligence of the New Zealand people. We are not anti-science. We are pro-truth, pro-safety, and pro-sovereignty. New Zealand's clean green image isn't marketing, it's our identity. It's the heartbeat of our exports, our tourism, and our pride. To lose that for corporate profits would be unforgivable. So I ask you, will we let unelected global entities dictate what we grow, what we eat, and how we live? Or will we stand together as kaitiaki, as protectors of our land, our people, and our children's future? There comes a time in life where we have a sliding doors moment, and this is our time. This is our time to raise our swords from love to protect what we value most. This is that moment. So I encourage each of you to stand with us by writing to your MPs and asking them to vote against this bill. Together, let's stand in truth, in love, and in courage, and tell Parliament loud and clear, we do not consent. Thank you.
Let's talk about your food and what the New Zealand government and the mainstream media are not telling you. You see, the Gene Technology Bill isn't about passing one law, it's about a whole system of changes quietly working together in a regulatory type of lockstep. And if you haven't been paying attention, the Gene Tech Bill is proposing to completely deregulate genetically modified organisms into our farming systems, in medical applications, but more importantly, in your food. But what this will also do is give massive corporations more control over the food supply. They'll have no liability, no traceability, and also pass the cost of any GMO contamination onto you, the taxpayer. And at exactly the same time, New Zealand's Food Safety Authority is laying the groundwork for rewriting the labelling requirements for genetically modified organisms in your food products. Specifically, the proposal P1055 is updating how gene technology and new breeding techniques are defined under New Zealand food law. Essentially, what this is doing is it's redrawing the boundaries of what counts as genetically engineered food, so they don't need to label it anymore, even though it is genetically modified. So just to be clear here, the reason they're saying they don't need to label it anymore is because they're saying they're using modern gene editing methods, so they're not considering it as genetically modified. So they can bypass any labelling or pre-market safety checks. Not only is this dishonest, but it makes it harder for consumers to know what's in their food, and it takes away your right to choose. And New Zealand's own Food Safety and Biosecurity Minister, Andrew Hoggard, is the one in charge of how transparent your GMO labels are. Meanwhile, the Ministry for Primary Industries is calling to raise the acceptable limits of glyphosate by 100 times. And again, if you are paying attention, this lines up perfectly with making GMO herbicide-resistant crops easier to get in the soil in New Zealand. And on top of that, the RMA reforms are removing precautionary principles against genetically engineered organisms and stripping away those safeguards that protect ratepayers. That means communities have less say, less protection, and more risk offloaded onto the public. All of these changes work together. They reshape how our food is grown, who owns it, who controls it, and how honest your food labelling is. And if you care about all of those things, now is the time to speak up. The Gene Tech Bill will reach second reading on the 10th of October. It's imperative that your MPs hear from you and you let them know that you don't want this bill and you don't consent to this experiment. Because once that GMO genie is let out of the bottle by these guys, there is no going back for New Zealand. If you live in New Zealand and you eat food, you might want to watch this. Just yesterday, the Health Select Committee reported back on the Gene Technology Bill. And I'm going to be honest, this is pretty shocking. Despite overwhelming public opposition, the government is still recommending to push this bill through. This report, despite 2 delays already, still does not reflect the real dangers that GE poses to human health, to our native species and environment, nor to the unique position that New Zealand has as an agricultural non-GMO exporter on the world stage. It also completely ignores the 97% of the submitters who are strongly against this bill. Yes, 97%, as stated in their own report, and yet the government is choosing not to listen. This report shows National's real intent to open up New Zealand to the most permissive GE regime in the world, sell us out to corporations, and potentially even in the process, destroying our economy. It also fails to mention any of New Zealand's own GE disasters already. The constant failed field test trials, the genetic experiments in animal suffering, the multi-millions of taxpayer dollars wasted with no public benefit. So the question is, why would we further lean into that mess rather than learning from it? These so-called tweaks in the Health Select Committee report are nothing more than a veneer hiding the same rot underneath. So our question to New Zealanders is this: if the public can be fiercely against this bill and the government simply chooses not to listen, do you really live in a democracy or an authoritarian state pretending to be one? And to New Zealand First, Winston Peters, Shane Jones and Mark Patterson, you said you'd put New Zealanders first. You've said that you won't support this bill without sufficient safeguards for the environment or for human health. Now it's time to prove it. Because there's no fixing this bill. It's fundamentally broken at its core. We want pure New Zealand, not contaminated New Zealand. And it's time to kill this bill immediately. And my call to you, whoever's watching this video, it's time to get loud, Get engaged on this issue. Wake up your friends. We need to make our voices impossible to ignore. Share this video. We have until December until New Zealand may permanently change forever unless we act now. Check the comments to see how you can take action.
And will you give the same assurance if you fail to raise the revenue that you have projected?
We have put together a very conservative plan. No, Jack, it's very important because you've asked me questions about this and I've never been able to answer it in full, and it's important that I do.
I've just asked you a really clear question, so can you please give me a really clear answer? Will you give the same assurance
if you look at the way we have put our tax plan together, we have built in buffers. So we have taken conservative estimates for the costs of elements of our tax plan. We have also ensured that in year one, we generate more than $500 million more than is needed to deliver tax reduction. And then we have put this in the context of a fiscal plan, which you will see shortly, which also builds in buffers. So I am confident that we have put this together in a way that means we will not need to borrow for tax cuts, and we will not need to borrow for tax cuts.
Chris Hipkins, the Labour leader, is saying that you broke your promise, your resignation level promise, that you did borrow to pay for these tax cuts, $12 billion of borrowing for $10 billion of tax cuts, and that's irresponsible. What do you say to him?
I just say that's wrong. We've presented very clear figures today that show we're delivering the tax reduction we can deliver. We've fully funded it in a responsible way, and I think Chris Hipkins needs to decide whether he's coming or going. Does he support tax relief, or does he think there's not enough?
Tēnā koutou Aotearoa. We need to talk, and it's not just Māori. All of us who care about the future of this country, because something major happened this week quietly while most of us were busy living our lives, paying our bills, raising our kids. The government has removed the requirement for school boards to give effect to Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Sure, the treaty, the foundation of our nation, gone from school governance with the stroke of a pen. And before you say, that doesn't affect me, let me tell you something. This change didn't come from the public though. It wasn't asked for by teachers, it wasn't asked for by parents, and it sure as heck wasn't asked for by the rangatai. It was pushed by a private lobby group, Hobson's Pledge. Now, Hobson's Pledge isn't about unity, and it isn't about equality, and it sure as heck ain't about the education. This is a group whose advertising has already been ruled misleading and socially irresponsible. A group demanding that Te Tiriti be stripped from law, from government, from identity, piece by piece. And now their influence has helped remove the treaty from our schools, from our children, from their future understanding of who we are. So ask yourself this. Who benefits when New Zealanders don't learn their real history? Who gains power when local communities lose their voice? And who profits when culture is erased from education? It's not our kids, it's not Māori or Pākehā whānau, it's not teachers on the ground doing the hard work, it's business first lobbyists and politicians hiding in the shadows. Because a population divided, uninformed and disconnected from its past is easy to control. Where have we seen this? So, it's not left versus right, this is not Māori versus Pākehā, this is people versus power. Removing Te Tiriti from education isn't about fairness, it's the start of dismantling the foundation of Aotearoa. School by school, law by law, generation by generation. Now my Māori, where have we seen this? So if we stay silent now, Te Tiriti won't just disappear from classrooms, it'll disappear from everywhere. So this is what we need to do. We need to speak up and talk about this. We need to hold our MPs to account and ask them who influenced this decision and how. And we need to stand with our educators in iwi who back the petitions and support the schools that are refusing to back down. And lastly, we need to unite. Māori and Pākehā together, because Te Tiriti isn't a threat, it's the only thing that makes Aotearoa unique. It's our identity, our agreement and our promise, and we protect promises, right? So Aotearoa, we are strongest in partnership and we are weakest in division. So choose now, do we stand together or do we let lobbyists rewrite who we are? Kia mau ki te mana o Te Tiriti, kia kaha Aotearoa, wake up before it's too late.